Of all the animated sitcom families, the Belchers stand out in part because they are a poor family. Like, yeah, The Simpsons are often presented that way, but they live in a 4-bedroom home on a single salary. The days of that being lower middle class, even, feels antiquated at this point. So I want to explore the details of the financial struggles as presented on Bob's Burgers, and what it says about the family, and more specifically, Bob himself. Let's do this. Alright Internet, in discussing the Belcher family finances, the first thing I want to say is how happy it makes me that a show is touching on this. The Simpsons and Family Guy are the show's contemporaries, and unless the plot demands it, the families never feel like they worry about money. Sure, The Simpsons will save their money for their trip to Japan by going to stores buying questionable products for gags, but they will definitely do a Japan episode. I can't see Bob's doing an overseas episode anytime soon. But that isn't a negative for Bob's Burgers, because those constraints lead to more relatable plot lines, fueled by the characters' personas instead. Even when you look at the Bob's Burgers movie, the stakes are higher, but it is still centered on characters we already know in the town that we are already familiar with. They keep it personal and local in that kind of way. Whereas the Simpsons movie really went for grandeur. And I'm not saying that that is a bad way to go, because I really enjoy the Simpsons movie. It is just a different direction that shows the different priorities of two different shows. And just because they are my comparison here, The Simpsons has and still do that well, but the show oscillates between these two different story styles, while Bob stays firmly in their lane. One of my favorite episodes, one that highlights their financial situation well, but subtly, is Copa Bob Bana. In the episode, the kids find a big old stock tank that someone threw out, and they put it in their basement to use as a pool. Now, this in itself isn't necessarily a poor story. It's something tons of kid characters would want to do, but they get away with it, and that is the key. Bob and Linda are working at the Fish Owners' new club to make extra money on the side, the kind of plot that comes up a lot on the show because of the family's financial status. There are so many episodes of taking side gigs to earn more money, oftentimes emphasizing the need for rent, or other things that wouldn't even be a worry to upper middle class families, like Tina's birthday in season 1's Sheesh Cab Bob. These plots are part of the show's identity and help drive the Bob's cast to go to new locations and interact with characters they normally wouldn't. Like in real life, money plays a big part of your life when you don't have it. Let's look at the episode Gift Hard or Buy Trying, where the family spends the entire episode deciding what each of them will get with their share of the $100 gift card they got as a tip. After some mall-based shenanigans, they decide to instead use the whole gift card to get Linda a new sewing machine because she is constantly making and fixing things for the family. Something that isn't really a concern when you have money to spend. You can just get new things. You don't have to be constantly fixing and updating. Sidebar, I think I'm going to cover this episode a lot more in a video I want to do on Linda, but let me know what other episodes are worth covering for her in the comments. Also, I love this line from a recent episode.
Louise? What the heck are you doing? You dropped a nickel?
Louise, we're poor, but we're not that poor. I can get you another nickel, I think.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about in the video is the family's actual income. I'm no expert on finances or anything, but I don't have to be, because plenty of people have done the legwork for me. I've seen a lot of people reference an article by Hunter Joyner on Zippia, so let's check that out. Let's try that again. Okay, let's try this again. Come on. That's fucking this one works. Okay. And So I'll be referencing the breakdown of Hunter's article on Ranker. Hunter's breakdown points out that the entire menu with prices is a fixture of the background, and Teddy's standard order of a burger of the day and fries would run him $7.95, $11 if he gets a beer. This is an absolute steal now, but makes a lot of sense if you remember that the prices were set when the show premiered in 2011. This is comparable to the price of Five Guys back in the day, and makes sense for a local burger joint at the time that isn't trying to deal in fast food. Now, I'm not going to break down every step of Hunter's article, in part because I don't have it, but it breaks down a theory of 28 dead days and 3 miracle days a month. So, ignoring that gives us 31 days a month, it assumes that most days only pull in about 16 people, factors in a few different orders they assume would be typical and averaging them out, and then those miracle days, as they are referred to, really bolster everything, adding up to $5,146 a month before tips. That's about $71,000 a year with tips. But it doesn't end there. Once you factor in generalized overhead costs that the show emphasizes is high because Bob cares about quality ingredients, and the rent they need to pay on the restaurant and apartment, Hunter suggests that the family has to live off $23,000 for the whole year. That means that even if you subscribe to the theory that the show still takes place in 2011, and I do, they are living on a really tight budget. The Ranker listicle even references that the Belchers would likely qualify for a welfare program like food stamps. And I'm not saying that as a point to shame them or any real families who need these kinds of programs to survive. They exist for a reason, but I do think that information puts things into perspective. I'd even say that $23,000 a year is if they are lucky, because Hunter Joyner's math in figuring all of this out is fairly generous with 31 days every month, amongst other things. Like I said earlier, this adds to the constraints on the writing and keeps the show grounded in a way a lot of people can find relatable. Sometimes too relatable. I have heard that there are people who have tried watching Bob's Burgers and can't because it reminds them too much of their real life struggles or the struggles they had when they were kids. Which is fair. On top of that, it leads to episodes like the Season 3 Thanksgiving episode, An Indecent Thanksgiving Proposal, where the family is willing to pose as Mr. Fischoder's family to get him to hook up with a homewrecker in exchange for 5 months' rent. 5 months of rent is insane for most people. I would flip my shit over not having to pay rent for 5 months. So for a family like the Belchers, that is life-altering. Their margins are already so thin, and their rent is both for their apartment that they live in and the restaurant. Like I said, life-altering. So in discussing the Belchers' economic status, we should talk about the biggest thing holding them back from success, and that is Bob's integrity. Last year, I made a video about Bob's Burgers, the show, being about failure. In that, I touch on how Bob's focus on running the business is more on exciting recipes, burger of the day puns, and overall prioritizing his artistic expression as a chef, more so than finding ways to grow his business beyond his high benchmark for quality. He can barely keep the place going. His focus is more on recipes, burger of the day puns, than it is on finding ways to grow and sustain the business. Wait a second. Why are we replaying the clip of the thing I just said almost exactly? That seems kind of like a redundancy. It's what makes Bob both an endearing and frustrating character, and that is shown perfectly in the Season 6 episode, Pro Tiki, Con Tiki. In the episode, Bob's friend Warren comes to visit and decides to invest in the restaurant, writing them a check for $100,000. The trouble comes about because Warren wants to give the place a tiki makeover and leads to Bob needing to turn him down. Bob owning and running his own restaurant his way has always been his driving factor as a person. It's why he didn't work with his dad, because Big Bob didn't support his creative side. As much as running the restaurant stresses him out, it is still his dream, and he is chasing his passion. And I think that despite the struggles, I do think that he is setting a good example to his kids, showing them that it is important to follow your dreams. And he's still willing to do what it takes to provide for them. Like in Sheesh Cab Bob, he works nights to make the money they need to give Tina the birthday party she wants. and hijinks ensue. Now, I want to make a specific comparison here, meaning I have to do something I told myself I'd never do on this channel. Talk about Family Guy. In their 10th season premiere, Lottery Fever, the Griffins win the lottery, obviously. In the episode, we see how that money corrupts Peter, making him into a worse person. And while I get it's not a one-to-one comparison, because winning the lottery is very different than getting a $100,000 investment to go into your restaurant, but I think it highlights the difference between these men. Peter, with money, immediately started treating everyone poorly. I mean, he always does, but more so. And acting that way brings him joy. Compare that to Bob, whose influx of money made him less happy. This highlights where Bob's morals stand, and that he takes joy in the process of cooking and creativity, over anything else. Except his family. I feel like if Bob won the lottery, he'd just open a bigger Bob's Burgers restaurant and get some new equipment. Louise would be the one that would be corrupted. Anyways, that's all for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Also, I just want to say, I did read the article Hunter Joyner wrote, thanks to the Wayback Machine. The frustration stuff was all a bit. I wasn't citing sources I hadn't read myself. Let me know what other kinds of Bob's Burgers videos you think I should make, and until next time, have a good one.